linear feet, and then, times 25 feet one is usually what we do. Now, if you start putting in, benches off the path, 30 feet, then you can start, meandering that area and getting a little.
To me, I think we need to look at that 50 foot because depending on how small a development is or how large it is, with the detention basin that you have to build and everything else, I think that's a little high. And how big of an area is, 50 foot, you're going to have, 50%, I'm saying, 50% you're going to have, even on a small development, you're going to have a lot of stuff.
Well, that's not 50% of the lot area, that's just 50% of the open space and general requirements. So it means that of the open space, 50% of it must be that active common area open space. The other half must be passive, is what they're talking about.
And you said Lee Summit is 10%, but out of that 10%, how much of it has to be active and how much is passive?
Well, it's 40% overall.
So 30% would be active.
Can be active. And it has a minimum of 10% must be just passive.
And that's under Lee Summit for two-family.
For two-family.
So it's actually, the open space requirement is actually 40%.
Yeah, and I put 10% because I was looking at just specifically.
It's actually 40%.
Open space rather than what's called now active open space areas. So that was my error overall. Sorry.
But just out of curiosity, though, does that mean then that if you have 40% open space, 10% has to be common active? Does that mean theoretically 30% could be in private yards?
No, because private yards do not count as open space.
Okay.
Did you say 30% in Lee Summit was active?
Yes. So the overall open space requirement is 40%. Of that, a minimum of 10% must be passive, which means that in theory, up to 30% of that could be active.
So, just a quick question to make sure I'm fully understand. Just using my engineer's handle this portion of it. Let's say we have 10 units, 5 on one side, 5 on the other, and they're backed up to a green space area. And I have a bike trail or pedestrian trail in between them, or behind them all. And I have a gazebo. How would that area, and say it's 2 acres of green space land that's back there, how do you calculate that on active area?
Well, it depends if that green space area is part of the lot. With that so you're just talking about a lot, one big lot which would have 2 acres of.
It's going to be a track. Say it's a track. Track of 2 acres or 3 acres. How would you calculate? I mean, how would you calculate? Would you calculate that whole area as active area because you have a bike trail, you have a gazebo?
No.
Or are you just going to go 25 foot wide? And
what you would do if you had a lot and you had your, say you had your duplexes here, back here is your bike trail. Okay. Of this lot, 60% of it can be, your building, your duplex, your parking. The rest of this is the remaining 40% is your open space. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm looking from that open space to active.
Okay. Of this open space, under Lee Summit's requirement, up to 30% can be active, but it has a minimum of 10% must be passive, which means just space that's doesn't have a designated use.
Right.
Okay. With Olathe's requirements, you have, if your reductions are 50% of the common open space. So with this is Lee Summit, okay? With Olathe, half of this must be active. The other half must be passive. So if we were to break it down into percentages,
So you got more active required in Lee Summit than in Olathe.
That's
So
correct.
to answer your question, Olathe would require less active space than Lee Summit.
That's correct.
Yep.
That's
In a
correct.
nutshell.
Yeah.
Because they require 15%, 7.5% of the total lot is active.
That's correct.
At Lee Summit, 30% is active. That's a big difference.
Thank you for explaining.
You're
From
welcome,
a-
maybe it's not very
From
clear.
from the standpoint of what defines, the active, you understood like what Scott was saying. If you were looking at active and that trail went through there, a 25-foot linear swath would be considered active, and anything beyond that would be considered passive.
What about the gazebo?
The
That's
gazebo
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Just the footprint of the gazebo?
the-
And
Well,
the
it has
walkway,
walk up to
25 feet wide up to it, and
Yeah.
The
So-
bench around it or in it.
it's kind of up to you. I mean, you decide what, the gazebo has like grills around it, or you say, well, this is all a grassy area where we have
I'm just-
concerts.
just
It's all
trying to-
active then.
So you have this, essentially, this part would be active, this would be open. And this is all within the open space here. So within this overall open space, say you have a trail and a gazebo, this part would be the active footprint. What's left over is just open.
It's just an open
So that's
path.
the difference. Yeah.
Well, I'm just making sure, calculate.
I have a question for you, just on the economic side. If you had to provide in a duplex development, 40% open space and private yards, because I haven't seen a duplex development out there that didn't have private yards, and fairly good sized private yards, by the way. How would you make that work from an economic standpoint?
You can.
I'd take that into consideration when you work.
Yeah, that's what I'm well, to be honest with you, how long has it been since somebody's done a duplex?
Well, we're seeing them right now in
Yeah.
Chapel Farms.
A lot of them.
I mean, a lot of them. So,
That's a
I don't know when they will
duplex
pick up
subdivision,
again, but I'll tell you one thing that, just from what I'm reading, that may become more attractive to people, is the option of purchasing a duplex and either keeping one side as a mother-in-law, let's quote, a mother-in-law's quarters, but basically keeping one side for a family member and holding on to the other side for themselves. But we're also seeing more people who are looking at a duplex as the investment that will end up paying for their house payment, so to speak.
So my in-laws did, when they retired,
Well,
they
so-
bought a duplex, because then the other side.
Good Chapman
paid
Farms
more.
is mixed use.
It is a mixed-use
It's
development.
not a straight duplex,
It's
so it wouldn't
R2
go on.
is what you're saying.
Yes.
Oh, I see what you're
It
saying.
wouldn't
So-
fall on
So
you.
you
It's a
would, so you would
PUD,
get your
but-
flexibility through the PUD with the Chapman
Right.
Farms, is what you're saying.
Right.
Rather, yeah, you're right, we don't see a whole lot of straight R2s over there.
No, but that's what we were talking about, I think just before we came in, about how, again, trying to get away from doing everything as PUDs and trying to allow the base zoning to do the same thing.
So we don't have to everything do it. Moving on to parking. I know I voiced I like the one being fully enclosed in the parking. I really like that. Does anyone else have any comments? And then the street width. They're kind of the same.
It's almost exactly
Yeah,
the same.
so I don't really.
20, I mean, because you're excluding curb and gutter, so there's 2 foot there.
All right.
It's the
So
only
to
2 foot difference.
put this in a nutshell, the recommendations to have staff write up for us for the next meeting would be that to take out Lee Summit's 7.5, we want to have nothing units per acre. We like Olathe for lot sizes, because then we've got the flexibility. We like Lee Summit regarding stories and height, because then a traditional neighborhood design could possibly come in. On minimum setbacks, we like Olathe. On parking, we like Lee Summit with enclosed parking, and probably because we're doing more of the Olathe, we'll go ahead and do Olathe regarding the street width, since you're probably looking.
Now, we're going to still keep the R2 and RP2, or and use that normal zoning and plus the plan zone, right?
Right, so I'm
To
thinking,
allow us to get
I'm
the-
thinking we probably need to go with Olathe's designation of the RT, RP. I don't know if staff will agree with me, just because we seem to be incorporating the flexibility of Olathe. And
Okay.
which would staff prefer, to just have straight RP2 zoning, or would
Sure.
you rather call it RP2?
Whatever.
Does it matter?
Isn't the planned unit development or the planned residential overlay our tool for flexibility? And are we saying now we want a third tool that would be the quote RP2, which is really the planned unit development?
Yep.
Yeah,
So isn't then the planned unit development that we already have on the books our tool to do the flexibility within an R2 zone?
talk about putting an overlay on it, is that what you're talking about?
You know,
I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
You have the
it is.
base
We
zoning.
use overlays here in Blue Springs.
So this would be kind of replacing a lot of the overlays that we have. The way I'm taking this is if we give the flexibility in the straight zoning, then we probably won't have to do quite as many overlays.
If we do the flexibility with an RP2, aren't we duplicating what a planned unit development already is?
Yes.
Yes, we are. I mean, we're adding another planned unit development. We already have that. We have that under our planned unit development standard.
Well, we can look into that. Is that you're saying that perhaps we have more like what Lee Summit has set up with the basic zoning, and if you want to do these reduced setbacks and reduced or increased open space, but with reduced setbacks, you do that. And that's a category in the PUD.
Yeah.
You do an
That's what we do,
RP
yeah.
to PUD, and then it incorporates all these exceptions in our PUD part of the ordinance.
So why are we even looking at a lake though when you're saying that we're duplicating what we already
No,
do?
we're duplicating the process, is what we're saying. That
The RP2 duplicates a process that we really already have now
with the PUD.
with the PUD.
But the PUD
But the R2
isn't as
standards
defined
are
as
different.
what we're saying here. Our current PUD ordinances don't define it as
Well,
detailed.
and would we ultimately be achieving the goal when you were saying that every development comes under a PUD, that something's
Right.
sick with your zoning?
Yep.
So we'll have less developments coming under the PUD if we have a more well-described zoning, correct?
Nine times out of 10, I'm gonna go with PUD just to.
Just to give these
Most
exceptions.
developers need the flexibility.
Flexibility, yeah.
Yeah, but if you have if you have the flexibility in the straight zoning, would you just go with straight zoning?
If it met my criteria that I was wanting.
Yeah. And it sounds like the PUD still has some value above and beyond what we're saying here, though.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
I don't think it eliminates it, that process as an option. It's just,
One quick question on the rear setbacks under Olathe, and I'm sorry for jumping back here, but I'm a little torn between Lee Summit's and Olathe's just
Like
because
the
of the
alley
4-foot
thing.
alleyway garage.
Yeah, I like the alley thing, because that kind of encourages the TMD again.
and do you want to keep the same for the front yard setback from Lee Summit with the
What's
30
your-
foot for front facing
What's your
house?
guys' recommendation on that?
Yeah, we wanted the front one. Let's go back through this
I
again.
like the front one.
Yeah, because we wanted remember the garages, we wanted to discourage it.
So you like Lee Summit's?
Yeah, let's go through this
Those
again.
pieces anyway, the more,
Because
Lot sizes, we like Lee Summit.
where you get too far, dwelling size, not to really stir things up. Nobody has one of those that we've looked at, but there are ordinances, I'm sure, that have dwelling size in them. Minimum dwelling size
I
of
have-
1,000 square feet.
You know what,
I
I'm just
know
gonna stick
HUD
with Lee
has
Summit.
them, and then
Just
they
to
were
make
set
it
back in the
But we're trying to get the
1950s.
flexibility.
That's
Yeah,
fine,
but
that's
but
good.
he's saying that we can get
That's
that
true, that's
by
it, yeah.
design standards. But you're saying if we don't include this, that we won't be able to incorporate
They-
it in the design standards.
They determined back in the
Correct.
do you want to,
1950s.
do we want to throw in really
Yes.
I get a little
minimum
confused with
dwelling
some of
unit
this stuff.
size beyond what's required by federal statute?
Yeah, because I definitely wanted this.
I mean, if I want to do, if I want to do.
We do it for everything else.
I know there's places in California,
for
but they
single
talk
family.
about,
For single
Yeah.
family.
like single family.
I mean, I don't care.
Odd Street, I know, I'm just saying the same
Bigger
thing.
open
I don't,
space elsewhere.
maybe it's too
Remember,
dangerous to
remember
walk
Jim
in
Howard
there.
was saying though that this is good because if somebody sells it off, that's where that comes into
Sure,
advantage.
yeah,
So I like
exactly.
that because,
And especially when you get into cul-de-sacs, your front corners a little closer.
okay, you had a question on the rear one.
Yeah, not really,
So we like,
what's your, I like the idea of having the flexibility if we're gonna do rear set garages, and I'm not a real big fan of alleyways to begin with, but if we're to allow the flexibility of us to have that,
you like to have that inside of it?
yeah, well, not necessarily. I like to be able to come down to a 4-foot, be as 15 foot, and then having your alleyway is, that's, you know,
Tough.
that's a huge area.
So you like that?
part in the lease sum.
I like to allow the lease summit, yes, for.
Well,
for
we're trying to
for-
encourage T and D development